Around 6 months ago, Jake the analyst came to me with a particularly crazy proposal. He claimed that by using a combination of thousands of data points and artificial intelligence, he could accurately predict the likelihood for each game to be named Game of the Year. To do this, Jake would have to manually find around 40 different data points for around 140 games, going all the way back to the start of the PS4/Xbox One console generation. He would then write nearly 400 lines of code to create 4 separate AI algorithms and put them to work, training them to differentiate a Game of the Year winner from games that didn't make the cut. 10 different outlets were considered in this analysis, and as we'll touch on later, some were more consistent than others. This was obviously a very simplified version of Jake's methodology, but in the interest of time, those who want to learn more can contact him directly on Twitter. What was arguably more interesting than the results themselves were the findings for what makes a Game of the Year nominee. For starters, it appears that a disproportionate amount of platform exclusives go on to be nominated for the top spot. Perhaps not all unsurprising when they are specifically designed to be console sellers. Linearity also appears to have its perks in the storytelling department, while games without a story at all are destined to struggle for a nomination. In terms of ESRB rating, it appears as if nominations are directly tied to a game's subject matter, which, although an interesting finding, makes sense in terms of allowing for a more diverse range of themes to be explored. What might also come as a surprise is the split of both existing IPs compared to entirely new properties, and although established series have an obvious edge, sometimes a fresh start can really make the difference. In terms of open world versus a linear format, this was nearly a 50-50 split for Game of the Year nominees, which seems to indicate that it has very little bearing. Gameplay perspective, on the other hand, sees many more third-person experiences getting nominated for Game of the Year. With this being said, when we look at all games we measured, the player's perspective appears to have no bearing on a title's Game of the Year ambitions. Story, on the other hand, seemed to be a significant factor for a game to be nominated, which shouldn't be too surprising when considering past winners. To round off our pie charts, we have what is perhaps the best piece of data gathered, as the introduction of loot boxes seems to almost entirely prohibit a game from winning Game of the Year from any publication. We can finally give video game journalists credit where it's deserved. As for game genres, it appears as if ambitious developers should be targeting the action-adventure shooter RPG market, as all 3 of these categories appear to dominate in terms of sheer nominations. Moving on, we can see that for the most part, there are 3 general clusters of game length that we were able to measure, the majority of which are anywhere between 0 and 15 hours long. With this in mind, almost all of these games received no more than 3 or 4 nominations in their year, which could prove that longer games generally receive more nominations. Finally, when it comes to user ratings, games usually had very similar scores compared with what was given by critics, although notable exceptions include The Last of Us 2, which appears to be much more divisive among general audiences, and Overwatch, which as a live service game tended to receive lower scores the longer the title was out. Another interesting observation is that although most years saw Game of the Year come down to 1 or 2 standout titles, it's not uncommon for more wildcard picks to take the top spot for some outlets. Both BAFTA and Entertainment Weekly appear to run against the grain more times than not, although the 2021 winners were particularly fragmented. We now come to the prediction stage, where our AI algorithms start showing us some meat. Our AIs tended to find that games that had a Metacritic score between an 83 and 85 and did not have online co-op would very often get nominated for Game of the Year, as well as games that received a critic score of at least a 92. Additionally, games with a score between 90 and 92 with some form of online PvE were almost guaranteed to receive a nomination. In terms of length, it appears as if a casual completion time of between 27 and 42.5 hours seems to be the sweet spot for nominations. Finally, games with a high number of user reviews, in tandem with being both gameplay and story driven, were very likely to be nominated. With all of this covered, let's jump into the results. With the 4 separate AI, they expectantly all came to different conclusions, but this doesn't mean there weren't some obvious trends. For the first AI, a decision tree, we found that the algorithm heavily favored both God of War Ragnarok and Elden Ring, choosing both in every single instance. Victoria 3, Return to Monkey Island, Horizon Forbidden West, and Splatoon 3 were also lesser favorites for the algorithm. Our second AI, the Naive Bayes classifier, had an impressive 80% accuracy in its trial runs, and in every single instance, it only ever nominated either Elden Ring and Overwatch 2 for the top spot. Our next AI was a rule-based model, which was quite similar to the first. Although it initially chose titles such as the Skywalker Saga, Stray, Gotham Knights, Bayonetta 3, and Return to Monkey Island, further runs would produce Elden Ring and God of War almost exclusively. Finally, we come to Jake's problem child, a neural network AI that spat out some particularly spicy predictions. This fourth algorithm would go on to nominate every single game at least once, and only nominate Elden Ring twice throughout all of its runs. Quite interestingly, its most nominated game would turn out to be Sonic Frontiers, leading Jake to suspect that he had somehow programmed a furry. With all 4 algorithms considered, we can say for certain that Elden Ring will take home Game of the Year, as there's an 85% chance at least one of the considered outlets will award them the top spot. Coming in second was God of War at 60%, which although significantly lower, still pits it in with a decent chance of winning. The other games appear to have much less of a chance at taking the gold, with Overwatch 2, Return to Monkey Island, Horizon Forbidden West, and Victoria 3 all hovering between 30 and 40%. Whether these figures turn out to be anywhere near accurate remains to be seen, as we purposely uploaded this video ahead of these announcements, in case anyone thought we might have been making up our numbers. With this in mind, viewers are free to make fun of us in the comments if we turn out to be entirely and irredeemably wrong. Predicting Game of the Year is a long and uncertain undertaking, but as it turns out, buying a new pair of earbuds is one of the simplest choices you can make. With the end of the year fast approaching, you'll either be looking for a last-minute present for the people you like, or be dreading the thought of having to spend time with the people you don't. In both cases, Raycon's wireless earbuds have you covered. Raycon's wireless earbuds are already known for giving a premium sound at a far from premium price, and with a battery life stretching to 32 hours on a single charge, you'll be able to watch 8% of the entire runtime of One Piece without touching a single cable. Raycon is so confident that you'll love what they have to offer that if you're even 1% unsatisfied, you can return them for a full refund anytime in the first 30 days. It's literally a risk-free purchase. Viewers might be inclined to immediately head down to Walmart to pick up a pair of these bad boys, but with the much more convenient link in the description, you'll not only be able to take advantage of their exclusive flash deals over December, but you'll more importantly be saving yourself from going to Walmart. Not only this, but using the code HOLIDAY will also get yourself a 15% discount. So start calling me Sir Santa and click the link below to get a pair shipped in time for Christmas. Raycon, the YouTuber's choice.